We don't know much about the 30-some years that Jesus lived before his ministry began. Some scholars argue that our modern understanding of carpenter distorts the reality, that we start thinking about a union card and a middle-class job, when in reality, in the ancient world, the word meant day laborer. And so they propose that Jesus spent the vast majority of his life working very hard for very little money. A Mediterranean peasant, full to bursting with unrealized potential. Imagine such a man standing on the bank of the River Jordan. He is in his early 30s in a world where the average life expectancy is about 40. He has a sense, barely formed, that he is called to something. But it is an inarticulate suspicion rather than a crystal clear vision. If anything, he knows that his life could be more important, could be more intense, could be more meaningful. He is imbued with the sort of holy restlessness natural to self-aware underachievers everywhere. Mark's gospel is the earliest record of Jesus' life. It does not contain the Christmas stories that continue to echo in this room. There is no manger in the Gospel of Mark. There are no wise men. There is no annunciation, no awestruck shepherds. But there is a birth. Christ does indeed get born. It's just that in Mark's gospel, the manger is a muddy river. There are no cattle lowing, perhaps some carp swimming. And the infant is an aimless man, wondering what comes next. He spent the day sitting on the Jordan shore, watching John baptize hundreds of people. He sees a parade walk into the water, and eventually Jesus decides to join it. As the river gets deep, his robe grows dark. The current pulls him forward until suddenly he finds himself standing before John in the middle of the Jordan. Without a word, he leans into the baptizer's arms. John takes his weight, all of it. He holds him, and then he simply drops Christ into the water. Jesus' body disappears into the muddy flow. He sinks all the way down to the bottom. He is gone. John begins to worry. And then, after a few still seconds, in a rush, the water breaks. Christ leaps up, resurfaces, river flowing from his hair, drips of it rolling slowly down his beard. Aimlessness is drowned, killed, dead. Purpose comes alive. The day laborer is entombed at the bottom of the river. Christ the Messiah rises up from his grave. He strides out of the river, ready to save the world. His life is new. He's just been born. This weather has me thinking a lot about Minnesota. The Minneapolis bar that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, a place I worked for about a year, was in a neighborhood that had been gentrified rapidly, kind of overnight. What was once a blue-collar shot and a beer place had become a downtown hotspot. One of our regulars was a man in his late 70s whom everyone called the captain. He'd spent his career piloting a tugboat on the Mississippi, and now he was spending his retirement on a bar stool. Every day at 5 o'clock, he would settle in, order a whiskey and a Budweiser, and then he would drink 4 rounds, 8 drinks, quickly in about 90 minutes. He was usually on his way by 6:30. At first, it made me smile. I was charmed by the captain's kind of amiable obliviousness. He seemed totally unaware that his neighborhood had changed, totally unaware that his bar had changed, that it was now home to artists, bankers, and brightly colored cocktails rather than working men and Boilermakers. He brought a lot of character into the place, and occasionally he'd tell a wild story about life on the river. But after a few months of this, every day, the charm started to wear off, and I began to dread the captain's 5 o'clock arrival, dread the red look in his eyes after his first 2 rounds were done, dread the way he would stumble off the bar stool when it was time to go home, dread the role I played in all of it. But I kept on pouring his drinks. In fact, I'd pour them before he even ordered, so that while he was shrugging his coat off his shoulders, his whiskey was at the ready. But then one day, in the middle of January, as I set a shot glass next to his beer, he waved his hand in the air, and with this totally irritable look in his face, he said, "Enough of that. Pour me some tea." As he sipped, he looked around, clear-eyed, and he looked dismayed. It could have been the awful Lipton, but I think it was something more. Before his cup was half gone, he was up and on his way out. "I'm done with this," he said. "Goodbye." I never saw him again. If there is any irony in a man a few years short of 80 starting his life over, it was lost on him. He was starting over. A few weeks later, another regular sat down, looked around, and with a rude kind of barroom jocularity said, "Where's the captain? Is he dead?" At that point, I spoke Christianity about as fluently as I speak French, and I didn't know what to say. He wasn't dead, so I said, No, he didn't die. But I should have said yes, for something in that man surely died, so that the person he was born to be could live, could be born. We tend to think of Jesus as a man apart, towering above, his divinity a mark of separation from the rest of us. Such veneration does no good, no good. Jesus was not God masked in a suit of flesh with a zipper down the middle. He was Immanuel, God with us, fully human. And so he must have suffered the same sort of dissatisfaction that we all suffer. He must have felt, I am not doing what I ought to be doing, not living how I ought to be living, not seeing what I ought to be seeing. That is why he stepped into the River Jordan. And he must have experienced the same kind of hope that we all feel. He must have known that his life could change, that it would change. That's why he fell into the arms of John. The captain experienced it when he awoke one morning to find that though he still loved all the warm feelings, he was tired of the dehydration, another dry-mouth morning, another day wasted, and then he realized, I don't have to live like this. The changes you make in this new year will probably not be as dramatic as the captain's, but they are no less important. On a normal Sunday, I would not put things this bluntly, but you are determined in the middle of a blizzard, churchgoers. None of you came here to be reminded of how perfect you are. You don't need me to sugarcoat the truth. You know the fact is that you need to change, that I need to change, that all of our lives need to change, that God is calling us to be the women and men we were born to be, that we are meant to be. Now, your problems may feel intractable, insoluble tentacles that have grabbed a hold of you. But the truth is, there is a much stronger force at play, much stronger. Martin Luther once wrote, Baptism marks the daily death of the old sinning self. For in baptism, we go down into the grave with Christ. We go under the water. But baptism also marks the rising of a new self. For we are resurrected with Christ, and we emerge daily. We break the water daily to live new and righteous lives. A daily death and a daily resurrection. It's a mistake to think, we're very tempted to do so though, but it is a mistake to think of the Christian life as a ladder. Each Sunday morning, your own private rung on the way up to heaven. Your character improving and your morals enhanced as the years roll by. Steady progress on the road to perfection. A better description is a regular, everyday Easter, occasioned by a life of oscillation. I am forgiven, and I sin again. I step forward, and then I fall back. God loves me, and then for some reason I step outside that love. But it is not over. It's never over. God follows me and calls me home. I wander again, and then again I am forgiven. We are always able to slip up, and God is always there to catch us, to lift us up, to give us new life, another chance, another birth. The opportunity is endless. My father loved Christmas, and he would shower my sisters and I with gifts. Now that Callie and I have been parents for a few years, I've come to realize that his strategy was brilliant. If you have young children, listen to this. Inexpensive presents that occupy a great deal of living room real estate. That was his method. A 6-foot-tall inflatable punching bag, a cardboard house that ate up half the living room, a toboggan longer than the couch. Amidst all of this abundance, there was ample room to forget something. One year, about 3 weeks after Christmas, my dad came home from work with a dartboard, a small trampoline, and a backyard balance beam stuffed into the back of the family station wagon. I forgot these things, he said. I hid them and forgot all about them. Merry Christmas in the middle of January. Well, it's almost a week after New Year's Day. But if you haven't made a resolution to change, you still could. The holiday's over, but the gifts keep on coming. It isn't too late. It might feel like it's too late. It might feel like you can't change. Between the possible and the actual, therein lies the fall. That's what Bonhoeffer said. Between the person you know you could be, you ought to be, and the person you actually are, therein lies the fall. We feel that every day. The gap between the two seems huge. But Bonhoeffer also believed in grace. He knew that the gap between the person you could be and the person you are today creates space. Just crying out for God. Let it cry. Let it cry. Let her come to you. For God is always giving the gift of another chance. It doesn't matter whether this takes place 6 days after New Year's Day or 6 months or 6 years later. If we name the ways we want to change, we will invite the power of God's help into our lives. It is not too late, and it will never be too late. All we need to do is wade into the water, dive down deeply. A few days before Christmas, I had hit the limit with holiday music. Do you ever have this happen? There are certain years where the songs all sound good to me, and there are other years where on about the second Sunday of Advent, I am fully tired of every Christmas carol that I know. That happened this year. So I went searching for some new Christmas music, and I found a song from the 1970s written by one of my favorite rockers, Alex Chilton, from the band Big Star. Chilton is a famously sarcastic songwriter, and the song's simply titled Jesus Christ. At first I thought it might be a 3-minute curse set to a pop tune, so I listened with some trepidation. And what I discovered is that the song is Chilton's attempt to write a Christmas carol. It is not a particularly good song, unless you're of the opinion that the problem with every other Christmas carol is that they all lack a 90-second saxophone solo right in the middle. If you feel that way, this is the carol for you. So it's not a great song, but there's something wonderful about it. The lyrics are very plain. Angels from the realms of glory, stars shone bright above. Royal David's city was bathed in the light of love. That's the verse. It's the only verse in the whole song. The rest of it is all chorus and saxophone. And the chorus is this: Jesus Christ was born today. Jesus Christ was born. Jesus Christ was born today. Jesus Christ was born. That's it. He repeats these words over and over again. But then at the very end of the song, in this totally unscripted, off-the-cuff moment, he breaks the melody and he kind of shouts this into the microphone. And what he shouts is this: we're all going to get born. We're all going to get born. Not born again with all the baggage that phrase carries. Not only Jesus, but all of us. We're all going to get born. Why not? Why not give it a try? Wade into the water. Dive down deeply. Let the water break all over again. Let yourself be born. Life can change. Let's all get born now. Amen.